So, you want to be a laser chicken and you don't know how to pew pew? Pew! Well, fret not, because in today's video we will be talking about the talents, gear rotation, and more for balanced druid, so you can take the class, take it quick, go into dungeons, go into raids, smash some bosses, get some loot, and overall have a good time. Bookmark this video, because we're gonna start off with the talents. Druids have always been very useful to have around due to the wide choice of buffs and CCs they can bring to a group. However, when it comes to talent choices, what you want to look out for the most as a Boomkin are the damage nodes in the general spec tree, like Boomkin form and the talents leading up to it, Starfire and Star Surge, Nurturing Instinct, Sunfire, and Improved Sunfire for any fight that's not completely single target like Teros, and of course Lycara's teachings. As for our balanced talent choices, there are so many, we will only go through the ones that work really well with your eclipses, and the rest we will discuss per setup depending on the content you plan to do. Your rotation will mostly be based around getting into an eclipse phase as often and as quickly as possible, so these talents are the ones to look out for the most. Starlord gives 4% haste for 15 seconds, stacking up to 3 times, but stacking them doesn't refresh the duration, so you kinda wanna spam your spenders 3 times ASAP back to back. Given that Eclipse also lasts 15 seconds, the two spells have great synergy. Rattle the Stars would be next in line, and then Balance of All Things. Waning Twilight is also a talent to look out for, giving you an 8% damage increase on targets you have 3 dots on. The last talent we want to mention here is the choice node between Orbital Strike and Arcanic Pulsar. While Orbital Strike is easier to use, especially for players who are still learning their spec, Arcanic Pulsar is a bit stronger, especially in single target situations. So we recommend that you test both of them out and see what works best for you. For the pure single target fights in the raid like Teros, you can even pick Convoke, which, as it turns out, is only winning in single target. As soon as a second target comes out in any situation, Incarnation Chosen of Elune is simply stronger. Also spec into Power of Goldrin, our Spectral Wolf, which leaps onto the target to deal damage, and Denizen of the Dream. The last node we'd like to mention for the single target spec is New Moon. You can opt for this instead of Fury of Elune, but they both work well in this situation, and obviously, as we mentioned, Arcanic Pulsar. A more balanced raid spec is one where you can replace Convoke with Incarnation. You continue using Arcanic Pulsar, you drop Force of Nature and 1 stack of Balance of All Things, and grab your Starfall and Ethereal Kindling instead. You also change New Moon into Fury of Elune if you haven't already. For Mythic Plus, you want to take some different talents from both trees, general and the balance specific ones. Druids have always had great CC capability and mobility, so pick and choose whichever of the situational talents you need for a specific dungeon. In Academy, for example, you may want to spec into Remove Corruption on Tyrannical Weeks. Either way, in M+, you want to always choose Sundered Firmament from the Boomkin tree, which will proc a small Fury of Elune on your target every second eclipse. Make sure to pick Starfall and Ethereal Kindling for that spread AoE pew 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 and for your dot time extensions. As mentioned in the raid specs, we recommend that you pick Arcanic Pulsar, which helps you get your Celestial Alignment every 600 astral power you spend, but if you are not that comfortable with tracking your AP, you can also opt for Orbital Strike. If you want to have your shrooms with you when you go dungeoning, worry not, we got you! Simply drop Denizens of the Dream and a stack of Balance of All Things and get your Wild Mushroom and the Fungal Growth talent. Fungal Growth is pretty useful when you want to proc your Waning Twilight talent faster and you don't have time to Stellar Flare everything just yet, but more on this later. Speaking of Mythic Plus, as we mentioned, Druids have always been pretty good when it comes to utility. We can provide our group with Innervate, which will make your healers super excited to have you around, and Stampeding Roar is great in pretty much all content. As for CCs, well, we have Vortex, Typhoon, Hibernate, Cyclone, Entangling Roots, Mass Roots, but also Incapacitating Roar for AoE interrupts, and you can pick and choose which one of the talent nodes you would rather go for, depending on your group's needs. Don't forget about your defensive abilities as well, as we all know that a dead DPS does no DPS. We recommend speccing into the following talents. Well-honed Instincts is a very good talent to have in any content and in desperate situations. It also synergizes well with Verdant Heart. Matted Fur is also one of the talents you may want to take in synergy with improved Bark Skin, but again, this is situational and you should use your best judgment depending on the fight and damage you take. A more general talent uses improved Bark Skin, thick hide, matted fur, and well-honed instinct. And now let's talk about stats. Obviously, intellect is your primary stat and it is your best one as well, so if you have a choice between two items, you should probably go with the one that gives the most intellect, unless maybe the secondary stats are pretty bad. What we recommend is that when you are unsure of what to pick, always go sim yourself and see the difference between your choices. Your stats will continuously change as you get more and more gear, so it's best if you run a sim after every couple of items and see if your stat weights shift around, because it's possible that an item that was amazing for you last week will not be as great next week. So head over to raidboss.com and check your top gear or your droptomizer and see what you need the most. Either way, sim or no sim, balanced druids gain a lot of DPS from their main secondary stat, mastery, and you want to pump that up real good, with haste being next in line. Beyond that, crit and versatility are more or less on the same level, with crit being slightly more important. For enchants, you should use primary stats where available. Waking stats on the chest, for example, and Sophic Devotion on a weapon. It's a cheaper version of Sophic Writ. Frozen Spell Thread on legs, or Vibrant Spell Thread for the cheaper option. Mastery enchants on both rings, which are the Devotion of Mastery, or the cheaper version, Writ of Mastery. As for the rest of the enchants which don't provide primary or secondary stats, take Stamina or Avoidance. Watcher's Loam on boots gives Stamina, Devotion of Avoidance on bracers, pretty self-explanatory, Graceful Avoidance on cloak, and this will pretty much sum it up. Moving on to the gems, the Skillful Limited Diamond is the primalist gem of choice, providing intellect and mastery. However, it is unique equipped, so you can only wear one of them. For the rest of your gem slots, you should use the Keen Neltharite, a mastery haze gem, or Fractured Neltharite, providing a flat mastery increase instead. Once again, to pick your best choice, you should probably take a quick sim and see how they fit into your current stat weights. Your best potions will obviously be the ones that provide your main stat, intellect, so your choice should be Elemental Potion of Ultimate Power or the cheaper version, Elemental Potion of Power. You can also get these from Guild Cauldrons, but since Cauldron Potions are conjured items, they will disappear from your bags if you log off for more than 15 minutes, so be careful not to waste your mats on that. Bottom line, either take only what you're going to use before you log off, or bring your own potions to the raid. In Mythic Plus, you should probably be using the same potions. The best file you can use is the File of Elemental Chaos, granting you a random elemental boon, granting a different secondary stat on a 1-minute rotation. However, File of Tepid Versatility is on average around 50 DPS less, and it is not as RNG as Elemental Chaos. Unless you are going for extreme min-maxing and fishing for mastery pre-pull with Elemental Chaos, which is also going to cost you a lot of gold, you are much better off with the Versatility File. For your 2-hour weapon buff, we recommend Howling Rune, which provides a flat haste increase. And for your food buff, the Grand Banquet of Kaluak, this expansion's best feast, will also be your food of choice. If that is not available, you can opt for a Fated Fortune Cookie for the intellect buff, giving the same stat as the feast, or for Sizzling Seafood Medley, providing haste and mastery as the cheaper alternative. A good option for progressing bosses and long nights of wiping is the Alchemical Flavor Pocket, an item you can add when you get crafted gear, which will double the duration of your food buff, and more importantly, it will make it persist through death, so you only really need to eat once or twice per raid, depending on how long your raids last. At the moment, I think they're super expensive though, so it's up to you to decide if the investment is worth it for your pockets. Lastly, you can also get a Vantage Rune for specific boss progress or Draconic Augment Runes for extra intellect, but old runes still work as well. Our best in slot items come from various sources. For example, the best neck we can get at the moment is the Elemental Lariat from Jewel Crafting, as it gives a special empowerment to one of your socketed gems. You can sim which other slot would be best to craft items in, however the Elemental Lariat should always be your first prio. Another good jewel crafting item for Boomkins is the Signet of Titanic Insight in the ring slot. Now, when it comes to trinkets, things get a bit more complicated. The Whispering Incarnate Icon is our best AoE trinket dropping from the raid, but it's a pretty rare drop and you can bet most of your raid will drool over it as it is a very good for many classes, also due to its increased item level. Another one you can get is the Furious Rage Feather from the Knockout Offensive Dungeon, and you can either farm it and cry, or pray to the gods of WoW for a Giga Vault drop. If you have this trinket, you should wear it in all situations as it is a very strong one. Strong trinkets for pure single target for Boomkins are the Desperate Invoker's Codex, which may kill you if you use it at the wrong time, and Spiteful Storm, both dropping from Razageth. Eye of Skoval from Halls of Valor is really good, and the Conjured Chill Globe from the Primal Council are also amazing, both of them in single target if you're still progressing the earlier bosses and don't have access to the last boss just quite yet. It may be worth mentioning, however, that the Conjured Chill Globe is considered a healer trinket due to its mana proc, so in order to get it through the group loot system, you would have to set your loot spec to Restoration. For AoE, you can farm Infernal Writ from Court of Stars. In short, always use the Rage Feather and Icon if you have them at high item levels for any content that's not pure single target, with the rest of the trinkets replacing the Icon depending on the situation, and as always, we will recommend once again to Sim. Now, let's get technical with our rotations. And of course, as always, let's start with our single target rotation. Assuming you go with the recommended talents, your rotation also varies on how much you want to min-max your damage. You can start your opener by precasting 2 Wraths back to back at around 2 to 4 seconds left before the pool timer reaches 0, depending on your haste and distance from the target, as this is a slow travel time spell and it will hit your target as the timer reaches 0, but this is not gonna provide you with a giga increase in DPS, so don't stress too much about it. Continue with placing your dots, Moonfire and Sunfire and Stellar Flare as well, to proc the Waning Twilight talent, and then pop your cooldowns along with your pots and trinkets. Drop some Star Surges if you're starting to cap on Astral Power. Convoke next, use Fury of Valoon or New Moon, and make sure this will not cap you on Astral Power, and then your filler spells. Also, if your Starfire gets an Umbral Embrace proc, use it when you are in Eclipse. The most important things to look out for are not capping on your Astral Power, which means using Star Surge, keeping all 3 dots up for the ticking damage and Astral Power generation, but also for the Waning Twilight talent. Also, try pulling your Star Surges for Star Lord, Rattle the Stars, and for movement situations without capping and maximizing the time you spend in an Eclipse, preferably Lunar Eclipse. Lastly, use your filler spells. Use Starfire if you have an Umbral Embrace proc and you are not in Incarnation, otherwise use Wrath if you are inside an Incarnation or you do not have an Umbral Embrace proc. Do not cancel a Wrath cast if you get an Umbral Embrace proc. So to make it simple, for filler spells, if you are not in an Eclipse, use Wrath 2 times, which will activate your Lunar Eclipse. Then you cast fillers, Wrath or Starfire, depending on Umbral Embrace procs and Incarnation, until the Eclipse fades. Once again, these are the lowest priority spells which will be used only as fillers when you don't have anything better to cast. We mostly want to use them to get us in Eclipse sooner, for the synergy with our talents to activate so we can spam our spenders. Now, during double Eclipse, which you have during cooldowns or with Arcanic Pulsar procs in single target, you should cast Wrath instead of Starfire, as it is the better choice still for single target due to the shorter cast time. The reason we try to proc Lunar Eclipse in single target is to maximize our Eclipse uptime and buff our spenders faster. Once you have your 2-set bonus, your priority will change slightly. Make sure you track your Gathering Star Stuff buff and its stacks so you don't overcap on it, and cast your Empowered Wrath or Starfire. If you stack the buff to 3, your next filler spell will be empowered by 60%, aka you won't need to cast it 3 times. If you have 2 or 3 stacks of your 2-set bonus, you should cast Starfire. For 1 stack in single target, cast Wrath. For the 4-set bonus changes, well, this one is pretty self-explanatory. As soon as you enter Eclipse, drop either one of your spenders for free, and it also has pretty good synergy with Star-Lord and Rattle the Stars. In single target situations, use Star Surge, and in AoE, Starfall. Try not to overcap your 2-set bonus proc due to the free cast of spenders. Use your cooldowns as soon as they are available. It's best if you Star Surge before Convoke so you don't overcap on Astral Power. and it is also better if you convoke during an eclipse as the spells will be buffed by it. For our AoE rotation priority, we'll start off with our Moonfire and Starfire. In M+, you should use Moonfire while the tank gathers the packs and drop Sunfire when they're all stacked up. Drop a mushroom on them to help proc your Waning Twilight if you're spec'd into fungal growth as well, and if you are running the Arcanic Pulsar talent. Pop cooldowns after everything is well dotted up and Starfall away your Astral Power. Cast Fury of Valoon on cooldown and then Stellar Flare targets that will be alive for more than 8 seconds of the dot duration each. When you have nothing better to do, use Starfire. If you have your 2 set already, Starfire is worth more than Stellar Flare, so just skip that step and keep your Waning Twilight up with the help of your mushrooms. Now, if you use Orbital Strike, this gets simplified a bit by the fact that popping your cooldowns will also dot Stellar Flare to everything in its path, so you won't need the mushrooms for Waning Twilight. However, you should still throw them at your targets to keep the dot up as they generate loads of AP for your Starfalls, and they also do really good damage. Another important point is, as usual, the Eclipse. In between your mushrooms, Sunfire and Moonfire, make sure you cycle into your Eclipse as well as the Empowerments. Keep your Starfalls up and don't overcap on Astral Power. After all of this is said and done, Bounce is a super fun spec that you should be able to play at least once through Dragonflight, and this guide should make it really quick, really simple, really easy to get everything done and go smash some content. We try to approach balance from a really easy to understand perspective, so we kind of covered most of the basics and everything that you need to know to get it going, but there's plenty more to go into it and more advanced stuff to learn about Balance Druid that you should definitely check out. And if you are interested in min-maxing your balance and taking it to the next level, you should definitely check the Dream Grove Discord channel. There you'll find a lot of cool information, also links to written guides like on Wowhead and Icy Veins, where top tier balance brains have done an amazing job at compiling all the necessary information. A special shout out goes also to Chicken XD, who's also a big brain balance, and you'll find them in the Discord. They helped us with all of the feedback for our guide and make us understand a lot better what and how balance actually works. So thank you, man. Make sure you also check Chicken XD at their Twitch and YouTube. The links are on the screen right now and also in the description down below, and give them some proper love. Thank you, patrons, for supporting the content. You guys are making this possible. We love you. Thank you for keeping our dream alive. And hopefully, if you want more content in the future, dear viewer, you might want to check our Patreon page. The link is down below. You'll be able to find a couple of tiers with a couple of goodies depending on exactly what you want. You will be supporting us and we'll be able to do more of this in the future. Thank you for watching the video. It's a word. It's video. It's how we say it in Romanian. See you next time. Bye-bye.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.